Hello, bonjour. My name is Gboyega Odubanjo. I'm going to read some poems from my pamphlet, Auntie Uncle Poems, and then I'm going to read in between that a poem by Jamal Mahmood. The first poem I'm going to read is called World Parent. All the Nigerian aunties and uncles are holidaying in Dubai. They are eating only Nigerian food and talking only to their drivers. They are posing as they give thanks, WhatsApping everybody. Claim it's a kind of home that doesn't know their name, so can't wish death. Say they like it because it holds no notions of them. For example, all Nigerians are liars who spin tales from imported fabrics. It was a Nigerian man who first discovered Dubai. The whole world, in fact, came descending with pockets full of sand and all manner of the earthly. Where there was water, took the sand, dashed it this way, that, and where it landed, stepped. Continued in this fashion so as to form plain, plateau, etc. To everything he named and added names that no one would ever say. Liked the sound of his own voice. Preyed on land, his and of himself, imagined it profitable, dreamt of land black as oil and dark-skinned suns, carved his name in tall letters everywhere, forgot how to spell it, improvised, stepped back, looked at his work, this, and was large and proud. Seeing his son's work, seeing their son's work, his parents think this for why. Wonder if they bound him too much in freedom and comfort. They think their son's hands spoiled, soft and pencil friendly. They think instead of lawyer, doctor, this. Tell their friends of him. Call him architect. Do not say of what. Cool. Next poem is called Diplomacy. Dad wants the head of the fish, but Uncle is eyeing it up and in a better position to get it. Dad has just learned from Uncle's son that what Uncle really wants is a bigger portion of rice. Mind, we won't know if it really is Uncle's son for another 2 to 4 weeks, but Dad, who can only assume it's Uncle's son, gives Auntie a look. Auntie, who isn't actually Auntie but cousin, just much older, knows this look to mean if she can distract Uncle with what he really wants, then Dad can get what he wants, and he can give Auntie what it is she really wants, which is for her daughter to stop giggling with Uncle. This being another uncle, who actually isn't an uncle at all. Dad knows that this uncle would happily give up giggling with Auntie's daughter if someone could find him somewhere in the city that had good prices on necessities such as cowfoot and ground crayfish. This uncle's been here 3 weeks and, other than the food at this gathering, can't say he has tasted anything like what he is used to. A reminder to mind your own. This table you're shaking, this suede loafer you're stepping on, this sofa arm you sit on in this shindig we in, every man deep, bottles to hand with the film over the carpet, the smell of us, the DJ swimming in the wet of us, our arms a ceiling fan, a rescue ship, this worrying base, plenty we're sorry not sorry for, this place you pre. Remember, you don't have rights here. We don't know you from nowhere. You may know not what you do, but you need to know here. Tuesday. Here we are, fat as husbands. A bag of peas between us. I would change the channel, but no one has paid the bill, and the man coming to fit the box needs me to phone my guy who will phone him, and then he'll call me back. I'm waiting, the flies in here are like bailiffs, watching something terrestrial, and from the buttocks of my heart, what I wouldn't, for a cotch to lay my hat in east, windows that open all the way, an ice maker all to myself. I wouldn't give my name, not laughter, but everything else. This next poem is called Dawston Lane. We huddle by the upstairs window, face the noise. It is a street song kettled and screeching its own broken yes. We could watch it on the TV but do not trust the definitions of its body still learning to move to this noise that scratches on them, skipping. So we look. My dad is first to turn. He steps outside and squats on the roof of his car, throwing shiny objects onto the floor, distracting those who might approach him. My sister follows with a bucket and a sponge. She washes the road of all its glass and its blood, tells us that it is her glass and her blood, refuses help. My brother is stapling himself to the street signs. My sister is washing his blood, which is her blood also. My brother has stretched himself so wide around the noise and is checking everybody's papers as they enter. My mother stands on the corner of every road. In her arms is a book of names that she has given and must give to the noise. I stand behind her, holding her hand, waiting my turn. The noise is blurred big and still I am not knowing how to move. This next poem is called Oil Music. Call it a love song. I'll get the bathtub ready. I'm in, we in ceramic, let's say black. I'm BP, your Shell, we all in, we in the black, we both in a barrel, call it a village, we both in the pumping, the people, no get no nothing, no crabs in the river, no periwinkles to pick, no day they pass where they know they cry, suffer this kind, suffer like this. We no care for them. I just want you to seep, blacken my lot. Cool. The next poem I'm going to read is by Jamal Mahmood from his collection, The Leaf of the Neem Tree, published by Hajar Press. It's called Liminol. Take me someplace where wet black coal is painted around my eyes. Let it run down my face. Let me run at pace. Let me get somewhere when I am out of breath. Give me the satisfaction of a terminating joy and all the grandeur of small victories. There is something false in the big ones, like a claim at divinity. The men who claim to be gods are just lowercase g's, a celestial laughingstock, the dust on a stolen sipper in the mosque courtyard. Give me freedom from this child's play. The abandon you feel for a second playing in a warm sea. The weight of the blue expanse, your back to the world's back to yours, water holding your skin with the care of a new lover under the eye of a jealous sun. If all daybreaks were so kind, perhaps this wouldn't be Earth. Cool. I'm gonna read a couple more poems, the first of which is called Grace, which was my grandmother's name. I am told that my father liked to travel and that wherever he went, he would write his name in big letters into the ground. Last week, someone from New Jersey contacted me claiming that they had found his name written into one of their ports. There is a general agreement as to the amount of times my grandfather wrote his name into the ground, but nobody can be certain because there are too many ports. My grandfather had 7 wives, and my grandmother was, amongst other things, my grandfather's first wife. When I ask, I am told that she, having failed to predict her own firstness, built herself into an anchorite made from her wedding gown and Yoruba words which all translate poorly. When I ask, I am told that many of the words that would describe my grandmother translate poorly, and so I am told that she was quiet, and she died young quietly, and that it just happened like that, and that there is not really that much to be said about it. Cool. I'm gonna read 2 more poems. Babel. Everybody going, gone. People packed, went outskirts and elsewhere. Sound been bagged. Aerial come down. Music plucked from sky and scattered. Tower come down. Lives in matted, woven nylon zipped. Uncle, cousin gone. Bass in backpacks. Trunk rattle hushed. Couldn't no centre ever hold all that racket, no. Woman on the 67 bus with the stories, she's gone. Estate scrubbed clean of its grimy self. Loiter song gagged. Gap toothed whistle no more. Song not ever. Pastor on the corner mistakes empty for heaven. Communion run empty. No 2 or more gathered. No bodies here. Only ghosts and memory holding this nothing and nobody place up. Lovely jubbly. This final poem I'm going to read is called Back to Sender. It's the 3rd deliverance today, and I don't want to sound ungrateful. Thank you for keeping your eyes closed for me. I told you I'm good, but thank you for the oil all on my forehead, for the blessings, but I'm running out of space. I'm in the market, pushing piety never worn, intercepting all the prayers you sent on my behalf. What am I going to do with discernment when I can't even remember which one of you lot owes me money? Wallahi, call blind me. No be me killed Jesus, no be me want forgiveness, I swear. Pray for the pagans, save the myrrh and mercy for the ops. Cover London in the blood. Cheers.
Hi, my name is Troy Capita. I'm a senior library assistant at Northcote Library, and we're here right now with the fantastic Gboyega Odubanjo, who has just shared his poems with us. How are you doing, Gboyega?
Hello, Troy. I'm very decent, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for coming on to share your work with us and to talk about your pamphlets. How are you doing? Because by the time we're recording this interview, the pamphlets just days away from being released. How are you doing right now, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I feel good. I think that is a pamphlet that I am proud of, but at the same time, it is one that's been written for the large part in lockdown. So even though the book is out, it doesn't necessarily feel like it just yet.
That's right. I understand that you have had, this is going to be your second pamphlet, right? So the pamphlet's called Auntie Uncle Poems, and it's your second pamphlet. And you had a first one, which is called While I Yet Live, which released 2 years ago. Can you explain to us sort of the differences of these two projects and how you approach them?
I think that so the first pamphlet, While I Yet Live, as you say, came out 2 years ago with Bad Betty Press, and that was written mainly during my creative writing masters. And I don't think that there was any point in the process where I was thinking I'm writing a pamphlet. But it was at a later stage where I had a bunch of poems and I looked at them and I thought that the poems that were in While I Yet Live, fit together thematically in terms of talking about, I don't know, being black in London and talking about mortality and religion and stuff like that. Whereas with Auntie Uncle poems, I'd had the idea for quite a while of writing a pamphlet which focused in a large part on the experience of Nigerians in London specifically, and more generally, diaspora and all of that jazz.
That's so interesting. Did you come? So when you came into the second pamphlet, what was it like with this having this? Because from what I understand, you have this idea of what the general direction was going to be for the pamphlet. What was that like? Because in comparison to the first pamphlet where you wrote the poems and then you decided to compile them together.
I think that for me, it helped a lot. I think in terms of writing, I'm quite object orientated. So having this clear theme or concept in my head meant that I wrote a lot of the poems within quite a short time frame. I would say that maybe half or 2/3 of it were written during that first lockdown. So in a space of like 2 months or so. And I think that I was able to do that because I was literally just sitting at home and thinking about it and writing more or less every day. And that's not something which was possible before lockdown or which has been possible after lockdown.
That's interesting because a lot of poets I've spoken to, when I asked them about the process and how that was affected by being in lockdown, is that sense of being given the opportunity to be introspective, because we're not given a lot of, I guess, stimulus to external stimulus to play with. So to have that, that space to actually look within yourself for things to sort of write about, it feels almost like new territory, isn't it?
Yes, I think that because there's always the question of just how isolated or individual we are as writers. So whilst lockdown meant I couldn't go to poetry nights or interact with other poets as much as I might have wanted to, I think it wasn't 100% introspection because it meant that I could spend more time reading or more time editing. And whilst, of course, a lot of that is focused inwards, I think that the content of the pamphlet itself was mainly focused outwards, in that whilst I was talking about my family, I wasn't explicitly trying to write about myself. So there was that dynamic.
Yeah, that's so interesting because in many ways there's still so the same mechanics being played here, but in just different, I guess, things to play with in general. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, I can't wait to read it when it comes out. And especially since it became a recipient for this year's Eric Gregory Awards. So congratulations. And
Thank you,
how does it feel to have this award for your project?
It feels very good on a personal level in that it's been given external praise by judges and poets who I respect greatly. And that's always very decent. But I'm at the same time wary of connecting too much of my practice and my value in myself to other people's opinions, because just because only 7 people were recipients of the Eric Gregory doesn't mean that those are the 7 best poets or anything like that. Yeah.
I think it's a very healthy answer. You know, because there's a lot of talk about like awards culture, which
Mm,
I,
yeah.
quite honestly, I didn't even hear about until like a few
Mm,
days ago, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of about that, and it's really refreshing to hear things like that, because that is how you should treat your work. It should still be about the work, and you know.
yeah, but of
Hmm.
course, it is, as I said, it's always going to feel good if you're the
Hmm.
recipient of an award and if someone gives you money. And it would be disingenuous of me to say that I don't care about it, because I do. But it's about realizing that within poetry and within awards culture, it's not the be all and end all.
No.
And if you allow it to be either as a recipient or an applicant, then I think you're doing your practice a disservice, and you're doing the many, many readers outside of competition judges a disservice.
I think that's very well said. And I think that connects quite interestingly to my next question about work, and about, passing that on and focusing on the work. Because as we
Mm,
understand, you're an editor for a journal called Bathmag.
yes.
Um, how are you finding that right now? Because you guys have just released your fifth issue, I believe, right?
So we released our sixth issue in spring. Our seventh issue will be released at the end of August. So at the moment, I'm very much in the process of reading submissions, and it's a lot, but it is something which I enjoy doing.
Mm. What
Yeah.
is it like being on the other side of the submissions process? Being able to like actually, have a say in what makes a journal issue.
I think that, like, sometimes I feel like a bit of an arsehole. Am I allowed to say the word arsehole?
You are, don't worry.
Okay, cool. Because I think that, similar with, say, awards, it can be perceived as, if this poem is rejected, then that means I've wasted my time or something like that. And at times when there are thousands of submissions, it's about realizing that I probably don't have the time to read submissions more than once. So there's a clear disconnect between the work and care that someone may have put into their own poem, and the time that the editor is spending reading that individual poem. And I don't think that that means that I'm showing an inadequate amount of care, but just that there's a lot of poets, and thus there's a lot of poems. So it's also about understanding that editors and readers will naturally respond to different and particular things. There's a lot of unlearning to be done when reading poems and when editing poems, in terms of understanding that just because this isn't a poem or a type of poetry that I read most often, that doesn't mean that it has any less value or worth. And it's about trying to be as objective as possible, as difficult as that may sound.
It is. It can be very
Mm,
difficult, because a lot of the, I think in many ways we can never stop being subjective, because
yeah,
it's part of who we are. And I
mm,
think to have that, as part of what you do as an editor, I think it's a very healthy and interesting challenge,
mm,
because and also I think as creatives, as as submitters to work,
mm,
I think it really does allow us to understand that it's never a personal thing at the
mm,
end of the day, because we're trying our best to be
yeah.
objective about the work, and it's just very, yeah.
I think that at times it can feel personal, especially when you consider the structures of the place that we live in and the industry that we are a part of. When you think of the under and misrepresentations of people that have happened and that continue to happen. And so we all know that for a long time, it's only been a certain type of poetry or poetry written by certain people that has been published or awarded. And so, as much as we can try to depersonalize it, it remains a fact that it's still very personal, and it still comes down to things which it shouldn't, such as gender, class, race, sexuality, disability. So to say that I can be completely objective would be false. If I am reading the work of someone and they're talking about London, or they're talking about Nigeria, or they're talking about a particular type of music that I like, then naturally I'm gonna light bulb's gonna go on in my head. But it's about going beyond that and trying to go beyond the different identities that we ascribe to or perform, and read the work for what it is as opposed to what I may be bringing to it.
Mm, mm. I think there's a lot of strength as well in keeping that sense of subjectivity in the way we approach these works, especially in poetry and literature. Because once we take that out, I think maybe there's a chance of being able to succeed in being truly objective. I think you lose a leg. I think you lose a lot in being objective, because as you said, a lot of how we perceive this work is important. And there's a ripple effect in that, especially if you're in that position of choosing which poems and which narratives go into a journal. And I think that's a very beautiful thing. And,
Yeah, I think we're all invested in poetry for a reason, because it's something that we love or that we are passionate about. And I think that with that love and with that passion comes, or at least should come, a great deal of care, regardless of our roles or positions, regardless of whether we are readers or writers or editors or whatever. I think it's, yeah.
I can listen to you talk all day. I think the way you speak about care specifically is just like, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of care that is being put in this work, both as a poet and as an editor. So these are aspects that we should always think about and take into account when we do these activities.
Yeah, hopefully, innit?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I can talk to you, like I can listen to you talk about this all day, but I do have one last question for you to close this interview. So if you get, let me just double check if I wrote this correctly. If you could speak to your past self from 5 years ago, what sort of advice would you give them with all that you know now?
In terms of poetry?
Just in general, but mostly poetry if you want.
I think in terms of life, it would just be like, take it easy, like just relax a bit. I think 5 years ago, I was maybe trying to perform certain aspects of myself, which I look back at now and I'm like, just take it easy. Just maybe it's easier said than done, but trust in growth. And that sounds nebulous and garbage, but yeah, if I could see myself 5 years ago, I would go up to him. I would just be like, bro, just relax. It's not that deep.
Yeah. And you know what? That's like, not a lot of people say that. Not a lot of people say that to one another. I feel like when that's the sort of advice you give someone, it's not the first reaction you get is not always, oh, that's right, that's important. It's always like, yeah, no, but that people always think that to say to someone it's okay, that should be automatic, but it's not a lot of the time, you know.
Yeah.
So to take the time to actually say it is very important.
And also, don't let anyone take you for a mug. That would be one. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's another thing as well. That's another thing to say, like, it's okay and don't be taken for a mug. That's like, these are things that you have to hear, especially from someone from 5 years in the future. I think that's gonna be important. Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you very much again, Gboyega, for sharing your work and your wisdom about care and not being taken for a fool.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate that. And just to let everyone know that your pamphlet, the second pamphlet, Auntie Uncle Poems, is coming out the 23rd, I believe. Is that right?
The launch is on the 24th of July. So would be way back in the past by the time that this comes out.
But if you are interested in grabbing more of his work, we've got this pamphlet, While I Yet Live, by Gboyega Odubanjo, out now at badbettypress.com. I have a pamphlet, which you signed on launch night, I believe, which I really like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. I'll speak to you soon. Have a good night. Thank you.